welcome everyone to this webinar. I hope you are all in the meeting now. This is a GCF webinar about MCX certification program overview. You probably have heard or seen that we have launched the MCX certification program less than a month ago. And this is now the opportunity for all vendors to find out how to get your product certified. Just to make you aware, this session will be recorded and will be made available after the webinar for people to watch. Also, the slides will be made available for everyone. On the agenda today, after the welcome, you will hear an overview from Asif about the MCX certification. Then Magnus will speak about how to guiding the manufacturers through the certification process. And Peter will tell you about how to executing the testing to achieve this compliance to the standards. After these three presentations, there will be questions and answers. And if you have a question, we will ask you then to raise your hand with this Teams function, raise hand. And you will be then admitted to unmute and raise your question verbally. So let me introduce the speakers. So my name is Harald Ludwig. I am the moderator of this webinar. I am also chairing the DCCA Technical Forum. And together with Asif, I am the co-convener of the GCF Mission Critical Services workstream. Then we will have Asif. He's also the co-convener of the workstream and GCF Head of Certification, IoT and Verticals. We have Magnus from Ericsson. He's Technical Product Manager and he is acting as the AASO, the Assessment Capable Entity for this MCX certification. And last but not least, Peter from AASO. He's Mission Critical Communications Consultant. And AASO is acting as the recognized test organization for mission critical product certification. Good, then let's start with the MCX certification overview by Asif. So over to you, Asif.
Great, thank you, Harold, and welcome everybody to this webinar. Very excited to give you this overview of the MCX certification, which is a program which we launched recently, as Harold mentioned. If you go to the next slide. So just a little bit about GCF before we get into things. As many of you know, GCF is an industry organization that develops, maintains, and evolves a certification criteria for wireless products and solutions. We're a membership company with over 350 plus companies to join GCF, from the mobile network operator, device manufacturers, test industries such as test equipment manufacturers, test labs, etc. And it's a collaborative effort to work together to define these certification criteria that's based on 3GPP standards. GCF has been doing this since 1999. And essentially, a GCF certified product really gives the reassurance to the industry that these devices are working and properly and interoperable with the networks. We've recently started the collaboration with TCCA, actually a few years now, on establishing this mission critical services workstream that's been designated to develop and maintain a certification criteria for mission critical services, and that's what we'll be covering today. Next slide, please. So before we get into the certification framework, it's important to understand a little bit about the main actors who are key to this program. So obviously we have the manufacturers, the UE suppliers, and client vendors who are certifying their products. But we also have the customers at the end of the day, the operators who are using these products in their networks, and specifically for mission critical services, public safety operators and authorities who are designated as mission critical communications operators within the GCF. As mentioned, we also have the test equipment manufacturers or test platform vendors who build the test platforms that then the devices are tested against. And we have the recognized test organizations, which are the labs that actually execute the testing. And as Harold mentioned earlier, the assessment capable entity. These are AASOs, or the third-party subject matter experts who are there to guide manufacturers throughout the entire certification process. And you can see there's a link on our website for both the RTOs and the AASOs to understand the list of companies that are providing these services. Next slide, please. For any certifier in GCF, you have to be a member of the organization before you can certify. And here I just wanted to highlight the different categories for the manufacturers that's available. So there's the full manufacturer category, the associate manufacturer 1 or AMM1, and associate manufacturer 2, AMM2. And for MCX client vendors, those who are typically just bringing software clients to get certified, the AMM2 category has been extended to allow that membership category to cover those suppliers. But if you're a UE manufacturer, for example, who is integrating an M6 client or M6 client platform, then the AMM1 or full manufacturer categories will be more applicable to you. And a full description of the differences between these categories are all available on our website in the links below. I do want to highlight that from membership perspective, it's an annual fee to GCF. So we just take it one time, and it allows you to certify your products 24/7, 365 days in that period. We don't charge any additional fees. Of course, the certification fees, i.e. the testing fees that you might incur as a manufacturer at a lab or procuring an ACE service, is of course outside the scope of GCF, and those are set by commercial discussions between yourselves and the labs and the ACEs. Okay, next slide, please. So if we take a look at the scope of certification testing for mission critical, we're leveraging the standard GCF certification framework. So here you have conformance testing, which we launched with recently. But in the future, we'll be bringing in interoperability testing, field trials, and performance testing. But the actual testing methodology is using the standard GCF framework with the use of the ACE and the RTOs, identifying what the required tests are, executing those tests, and then doing the declaration. Okay, next slide, please. Before testing can be done, however, the manufacturer has to first identify what it is that needs to be tested. Our program launched with work item 288, release 14 MCPTT, and the test cases are covered in GCF CC Annex 4 F4.9. So these are in a PRD, or permanent reference document, that can be downloaded from our members portal. But in order to know which specific test case is applicable to your particular product, there's a conformance statement, or PICS and PICS that we call it, for protocol conformance statement that needs to be filled out. That is a 3GPP document that you take a look at, and you identify what features your product supports, which then allows applicability expressions to be applied, so you can map it to a particular test case in the GCF database that's validated to be used. Now that activity, mapping of the test cases, is done by the ACE, and that's where the ACE services come in, where a manufacturer can work with an ACE in order to get that mapping done, in order to understand what specific test cases will be actually executed. In GCF, we require that all category A and B tests are executed, and until such time as other tests which are in different categories come into those kind of same similar categories. And we know that the PICS documentation, as I mentioned, for 3GPP side for mission critical services, is indicated in TS 36.579-4 and 36.579-5. Now that's for release 14 MCPTT. We will, over time, add additional work items and newer releases of these for not just mission critical PTT, but MC video and MC data. So the program will evolve. And that happens on a quarterly basis, where new test cases are introduced. So that is something that, as a manufacturer, you would keep your eye on it as a member of GCF to be able to tell when newer releases are coming in and when will those be activated. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of understanding what route to certification you'll apply, we have identified at a high level 4 routes to certification for an MCX product. And I'm going to go these in a slightly different order. I'll start with number 1, which is the standard device with an integrated MCX client. This is a sort of standard GCF certification process methodology where UE manufacturers, which may support 4G, 5G, IMS, other capabilities in their device, also supports MCX as a feature. So they're including an MCX client in their product and solution, and they're certifying the entire product, so the device with the MCX client integrated in there. So that just follows a standard GCF process, and the manufacturer at the end of the day is responsible for the full system, i.e. to ensure that the full system is working properly according to the standards, it's compliant, and that it's been tested. I'll go to route number 4 next, which is the MCX client or client-only platform. This is specifically reserved for mission-critical service client suppliers who are bringing a software application to get certified. And here, while the framework is the same, their end product is actually just a client and or a client platform. And that platform or client needs to be installed on a host device that supports LTE in order for it to be tested against the test platform. But once that testing is done, it's primarily all IP layer and above. So the client is then certified, which can then be sold into the market. And if you're doing a client platform, then that client platform can be made available to other manufacturers who then would like to integrate that client either in their UE or even potentially other client vendors who wants to maybe put their skin on it and have their own kind of UI interface. So there's multiple ways, a client can be used in an end product, either directly or integrated in another device. These are the 2 sort of main 1 and 4 routes, but then there are other routes. So route 2 is when a device manufacturer takes a certified client or a client platform and then integrates that into their device and then offers that. And the main difference here between route number 1 is that the client platform vendor is responsible for their certification of their client. So while in route 1, the manufacturer is fully responsible for the whole system, and in route 2, the client software vendor is responsible for the client. The UE manufacturer is responsible for the UE plus the integration of the client. So if, God forbid, there's an issue that happens in the market down the road, if there's some checking of what went wrong and it turns out, there was an issue in the UE, well, the UE manufacturer is responsible, but if there was an issue in the client module that was certified, then the client platform vendor takes responsibility. But the benefit here is that if a UE manufacturer is integrating a client platform, then the idea is you can leverage those test cases and essentially reduce the time to market, because now you're already using a certified component into your device. And essentially that's route 2, which we expect will also take up. And then route 3 is just the opposite of that, where a client platform or client vendor can integrate their device, their client on a UE platform that's been made available. But we think this is maybe a very small use case, because most manufacturers aren't supplying their UEs as platforms, but are actually commercializing them in the market as end products. Okay, next slide, please. So just looking at the overall certification process, as I mentioned, you have to be a GCF member in order to be able to certify. So the first, you contact the GCF office, apply for membership. You have to, that gets accepted, payments made, and they get access to the portal, which allows you to then download the documents. Once you've downloaded the documents, you would work with selecting an ACE and an RTO from our list. And essentially the ACE will work with you as a manufacturer to define your test plan, have it executed at the RTO. The ACE will then review the final declaration results before you upload it, or once you upload it, they'll review it before and approve it before you're able to publish it onto our portal. But once it's published, it's considered certified, the device is considered certified, and you can then download a PDF certificate to show proof of compliancy as well. And next slide, please. Okay, so when we look at the declaration preparation, this is just a list of some of the annexes that needs to be filled out. This is in the GCF certification criteria PRD that's available on our portal for download. Again, not all might apply. As mentioned in phase 1 that we've launched, it's conformance testing only, so a lot of the field trials Annexes will not be applicable until later, but essentially you can download these, look at them, and data fill them out once the testing is done with the outcome, and then make that available for upload. And just to note that Annex F 5.5, which is the MCX field trials test list, is still under development, so that hasn't been developed yet. Will be part of a next phase. Next slide, please. And once the annexes are filled, of course, when you go into the GCF portal to set up a declaration, there's going to be a list of pages that come up. Essentially, you fill in all of the editable fields and indicate what features it supports based on what's in the annex. So the main thing is the information on the portal, and the annex needs to map. And of course, you indicate all of the features, who the ACE and RTO are, and then when you're ready to publish, you can publish that declaration. But first, the ACE has to review this and approve it. But essentially, it's taking that all of the annexes your data field, putting them onto the portal, and making that part of your compliance folder, and then hitting submit. Next slide, please. And finally, once you've uploaded it, you can download the PDF certificate. And this is an example of what a listing looks like. This is our first MCX certification from Frequentis. If you go to this link, you will see that it's a Mission X Android SDK. So it's a client platform. It gives just very high-level overview of what the device or the product supports, but only authorized individuals from the operator community who get notified of new certifications can actually download and look at the certifications and really delve into the results. So at a base level, all of the information showed at a high level are really just there for marketing purposes from the GCF side and on the public portal, and no manufacturer will actually get to view in detail their competitors' products listings. Okay, next slide, please. And in terms of once the device is certified, ongoing compliance is important. So as long as that product is in the market, if there's changes to the software or hardware, the manufacturer is responsible for maintaining their compliance. So they would have to identify what those changes are, do with the ACE, and do some appropriate testing, retesting, or regression testing, and then update their compliance in the same fashion that I just highlighted earlier. So the compliance at all times needs to be current, and the compliance folder updated, and each time that's done, of course, a notification goes out to the operator community so that they can understand, okay, there's been changes made to this device or this product, and so then they'll be able to take a look at that. Okay, so that's one of the responsibilities that the manufacturer has to maintain. Next slide. So a quick checklist for certification preparation. This is just a very high level question you might ask yourself is, do I have GCF membership? And if not, then which member category do I need to apply for? And I guess, as I mentioned, if you're a client supplier, it's AMM2. If you're a UE supplier, it's AMM1 or full manufacturer. You have to ask yourself, what is the type of MCX product am I certifying? Is it a UE with an MCX client, or is it just a client-client platform? Am I integrating a platform? And based on that, which certification route will I take? Now, all of these are captured in our PRDs that you can download from our portal, as mentioned earlier. And then once you have all of that, you have the login credentials for the portal, so you can access this documentation, understand who your ACE will be, who your RTO will be, and then essentially go down the path of undertaking certification. Next slide, please. And I believe this is my last slide. Some best practices to consider. So this is not rules or any regulation. This is just suggestions. It's just good to plan to certify your product with the hardware and software revision you'd like to commercialize in the market after all development is done and all the internal preset testing is done. And then having certification activity as part of the overall design and development. That's kind of key. You want to be able to run the certification tests at the development stage if possible to iron out any issues, because what you don't want is to go to certification and then actually find out there's bugs and issues that you're fixing, and then you're going back for testing. So you have multiple cycles of testing, because that will end up costing a lot more. Of course, engage with the RTO and ACE as early as possible in the project stage to ensure your product timeframes are met. You don't want to go at the last minute to try to engage someone and then find out that their schedules will not accommodate you. Attend GCF to get visibility into your, where the product roadmap is going, so you can plan your product portfolio. And this is attending the GCF workstream meetings, steering group meetings, etc. And while ACE is your main point of contact, the GCF office is also available to offer a helping hand and provide guidance. So definitely reach out to us. And a very detailed overview of the process is outlined in this document, MCS 2460. It's available to all workstream members. And there's a video of the presentation which goes into an hour long. It's an hour-long video covering the overall certification process, so you can download that link and look at that as well. And again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to us. I think we'll take questions at the end, so I'll now pass it on to, I believe it's Magnus who will now take over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Asif. Hello, everyone. My name is Magnus Trenk, working at an organization called Mission Critical Networks in Ericsson. I work as a technical product manager there. And I will here present a bit on what it means of the AASO means and how it can help you with the certification process of MCX clients and so on. Next slide. Yeah, just a bit background first here. So the certification is based on the 3PP standard here, and we have been involved in the standardization for many years here, and the mission critical part started it's about 10 years now already, and besides the benefit to the end user to having certified product, it's also now a very good step to get a feedback to the standard when certification is done. So this is also a value here when seeing that certification is started and that there might be things that's come up that needs to be corrected and so on, both in the development of the product, but also in the certification and the standard and so on. I will give you a little bit of standardization update as well, mainly focusing on the conformance testing, which is for the certification. As one of the part that I will talk about is the test case selection here, which is one part that the AASO will help you on. I'll come to that later on. And then I will end with end-to-end network aspects, which is important to consider, not only for because the certification here in the conformance test focus mainly on the protocol testing between the client and server, and there you need to also have to have the end-to-end network aspects in mind here. We can go to the next slide, please, here. So a little bit on what's happening in 3PP when it comes to the conformance testing here. The just last quarter here, release 18 was finalized in 3PP. The conformance test specifications it's done in the 3PP working group round 5, and they are, so to say, one release behind, you can say. The current versions are release 16, the series, this TS36579. And now in this second half of this year, they will work on release 17 here. So this is what's going to happen this fall. Of course, it's a plan, and it's always contribution driven. So this is just the plans right now. What will be added in release 17 is the support of MCX over 5G. There will be a new, because of the 5G aspect here, there will be a new series of the TS as well. So there'll be TS 38579 to cover the 5G aspect of it. It will also include, this is under discussion, server-side testing to also cover the parts when you make calls between two MCX servers and the protocols that are needed between the servers in that side. So that will be added. That's not part of that part right now. We can go to the next slide. So what the ACE role in this is then. So we can support here in the evaluating the MCX client features. That is, so to say, needed to be able to select the right test cases. Now, I should say that in this phase, as Asif already explained here, it is the certification program has activated for release 14, and currently it's for MCPTT only. MC Data and MC Video will come, but those are not activated yet. And in the TSs, there are currently 51 release 14 MCPTT test cases specified, and now there are 36 of these that are activated. So it might be that next quarter additional test cases are added, but right now there are 36 test cases activated. And at the moment, the selection of these are quite straightforward because all of them are mandatory. So it's an easy situation right now. So those 36 test cases need to be executed and passed. And in the certification, what the AASO role means here is that you prepare the test plan for this and submit it to the RTO. And when the test has been executed and the result is finalized, then the documentation can be uploaded by the manufacturer, and then the AASO can help up with a review and make sure that everything is correct in the documentation, and then the manufacturer can publish the result and get the certification done. As I said here, it's 36 test cases right now. When MC Data and MC Video are added, or when release 15 test cases are added, there will be more, so to say, analysis done here to the feature applicability to say that which features are required to test and which can be skipped based on the features available in the client and so on. We can take next slide here, please. So a little bit on the test specifications here from 3DPP. I mentioned three of them, 36.571. It gives the overview of the test environment that is used, and there are more than these three that I mentioned here. It's for video and data and other parts as well here, but these are the important part for MCPTT. You have the 36.579-2, which is the protocol conformance test specification that includes all these 51 test cases that I mentioned for release 14, and then there are already test cases specified for release 15 and 16 and so on, and then 70 will be added later this year. But as I said here, 36 of these are activated in the certification program in GCF for MCPTT. And 36.579-4 is also worth mentioning here. That includes the applicability of the test cases. So that's where you can see which features are mandatory and which can be optional, depend on different conditions of the client's capabilities and so on. So that's how you read out which test cases that must be performed. But at the moment, these are, it's quite straightforward at this point in time when all 36 are mandatory. And then I mentioned also DCC, which is the database in the GCF portal here, where you see all test cases that are activated have reached category B, and which ones that are still working on, and you can see which work item that introduce new test cases that will be added later on. That was a bit about the test cases and the selection of them. We can take the next slide, and I just mentioned a couple of words about end-to-end network aspects. So the conformance test is really about testing the protocol layer between the client and the server here. But there are several aspects that you need to think about if you develop a client or a server here that is, so to say, more transparent to the protocol. For example, the APN usage. If you use a single APN for all things in the client, or if you have separate APNs, if you use a default or dedicated barrier usage, all these parts are part of the conformance test, or more correct to say that you check that the bearers are set up in and are available and used when you test the client. But there are different ways to select them in a real environment. There are more deployment options that worth mentioning. For example, if you use a dedicated SIP core or a common IMS network, and there are also ways different ways to handle resource management, for example. As a client manufacturer here, these might be different aspects to consider when you implement the client, and you need to support all these things, and it's not always visible in the protocol. Then I can just mention that there are things that are, so say, currently not activated, like multicast and off network. Those test cases are not there yet. Just a couple of words about call models. In the 36 test cases that are activated, both the pre-arranged and chat model are included, as well as the different modes to activate the sessions, like the on-demand and the pre-established sessions. All these are included and need to be passed. And that is, so to say, input to the selection of the test cases. I think that was my last slide, and I'll hand over then to Peter for RTO services.
Yes, thank you, Magnus. Can you turn to the next slide, please? Yes, I'm Peter Gundersen. I work with AASO. Prior to that, I've been involved in mission critical communication for around 10 years, predominantly on the MCX side, but also a little bit on the network infrastructure. So I will say a few words about AASO, who we are, and then quickly move into the RTO and how the certification is executed, and also what support that can be provided to you when you prepare and execute the certification. Next slide, please. So AASO is a subsidiary of the Research Institutes of Sweden, also named RISE. One can say that RISE is the Swedish government-owned test beds and research institutes. It's around 3,500 people, and there are hundreds of test beds, not only related to communication, but also related to other types of characteristics that wants to be tested, like everything from vibration to extreme temperatures and similar. So AASO provides research and test and certification facilities that contains multiple 4G, 5G networks where we can test and verify on the proving ground things like handover, roaming, performance under different RF conditions, etc. But we also access chamber-based testing. In fact, RISE has some of the biggest EMC chambers in the world that are used for example, RF OTA testing and testing of different types of vehicles and communication setups. We have quite a broad partner network within industry, government, and research, predominantly in Europe, but also North America and Asia. And about a year back, the Swedish government provided certain direction towards RISE and AASO to provide more assistance in society types of use cases, in addition to the current ongoing activities, which are very much related to automotive, active safety, transportation, and similar. So the idea is to leverage the synergies with automotive and transportation to the benefit of society. And The practical areas to address initially here for AASO is the GCF Conformance Certification in Mission Critical. Different types of development support that we can provide, including providing the proving grounds for where you can try different types of connectivity scenarios in 4G, 5G, and also research. And as of now, we are conducting one research project in the area of mission critical, which relates to Sidelink, where we are working with Qualcomm and Texas A&M and Swedish MSB. And certain other university institutions to assess the Sidelink suitability for next generation device-to-device communication for mission critical. Next slide, please. So let's take a step back and with regards to Asif's earlier presentation and look at what are we certifying here. And we sometimes divide into the client ecosystem and the device ecosystem. And with the client ecosystem, I mean basically the applications that are developed of different types that can be integrated, more or less tightly integrated with different types of integration and executed towards with client device towards the MCX server infrastructure. So on the left side here, you see the client ecosystem. You see in the bottom, you see the MCX server infrastructure, and then different types of clients communicating with that infrastructure. On the left side of that picture, you see the near-time types of devices like ruggedized handsets, consumer handsets, vehicle mount, that are needed really for the migration. If you look here in Europe with the migration from Tetra to mission critical 4G, 5G, it's very much about voice and SDS migration initially. And person-to-person communication. But also as part of that migration, there are certain back-end systems that need to be migrated, where basically the back-end system remains, but you need to integrate it. Instead of Tetra, you need to integrate it towards MCX. Example of those back-end systems is control rooms, positioning systems, different types of recording systems. All this, I would say, relate to the migration of the existing Tetra subscriber base. But further on the right side here, you see other types of equipments that we expect to be connected more long-term, like drones, different types of machine-to-machine equipment, like telematics, we believe is quite a huge area. In fact, already today, Tetra SDS, basic Tetra SDS messaging is used to a large extent for telematics. So that is also migration, but of course a big future potential for MCX. And we believe that in order to reach there, that MCX will not only be the Tetra migration, but also address IoT and telematics. The conformance of those clients is essential in order to reach that mass market. And we believe that MCX has much more to offer, so to speak, than the migration also. That is relevant also in for example, the telematics and IoT landscape, such as identities, authentication, access control, secure communication, positioning, fleet communication. These are benefits of MCX, the MCX framework that can reach and be used to many other applications beyond the pure migration. And here, of course, standardization is essential in order to reach that mass market. Otherwise, something else than MCX will be used to address those use cases. So we consider that as a big opportunity for MCX. On the right side here, you see the device ecosystem, which is, can you go back to previous slide? Which is largely the devices where you, at least initially here, you will likely download an MCX client on one of these devices. And of course, the device needs to be capable to deliver a mission-critical service with that client. So we have the client ecosystem and the device ecosystem that we see are coming in now with different interests. Next slide, please. So briefly recapping also what Asif mentioned earlier about the routes to certification. You see here the 4 routes, and of course we did the first certification last month with the MCX only clients. We see also interest from several client and combined client server vendors to address this path. Once you have MCX client certified, those can be used as tools to accomplish route number 2. And here we also see the largest interest right now, actually different device vendors that want to get their devices certified together with an MCX client in order to provide a proof point that they are MCX capable. In the more long-term perspective, and especially if we manage to drive MCX to fully endorse the standardization, we believe that route number 1, which is a native integration of different types of clients, telematics, drones, etc., accomplishing different types of end products in the ecosystem, that will happen. But the prerequisite to reach there is that we succeed with this ambition of standardization between client and server infrastructure. Next slide, please. Conformance certification, how? The 3 steps when conducting the certification is the certification preparation, which Magnus covered earlier here, choosing the route and selecting the test cases. After that has been done, we bring the equipment into the lab, which provides a so-called GCF validated test platform, and we perform a certification dry run. And after that, the certification takes place. There is certain document output, which is provided to the manufacturer. The AASO will assist with assessing the results. After that, the manufacturer will perform the self-declaration. On top here, you can see 1 to X weeks, 1 to 4 weeks, etc. And what is driving the effort of this activity, I would say, is the amount of preparation. If you move to the next slide here, please. So the preparation of your product before you enter into the certification, it's about product stability, so that we don't want to have surprises or troubleshooting once we are in the certification lab, because that will prove quite costly very quickly unless the product is very well prepared before. And the second thing is test automation. If the product is prepared so that these tests can be conducted in a more or less automated way, then the certification in itself will not take much calendar time. So preparation in terms of product quality and preparation in terms of test automation is essential. If we move to the next slide, please. So briefly, how can AASO and our partners support you in this process to get your product certified? Well, in the product planning and development stage, we can provide certain expert assistance with regards to what you need to do in your product and how you can prepare for test automation. But we can also provide you with an online MCS test tool that can be used and accomplish a nearly certifiable product in order to avoid surprises when you enter into the lab. We do also work together with Ericsson in providing the AASO services and then the RTO services, performing the dry run as well as the certification. Next page, please. So as a summary, the RTO service is available now, and we recommend that, and we hope that you will start preparing for conformance certification in order to scale up and also meet compliance requirements that certain government entities might be putting up now when certification is available. And as a starting point, please give us a call and we can discuss your needs and do a quick assessment on what you need to do in order to get your product certified. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Magnus and Asif. We are coming to the questions and answers now. So you have the opportunity to ask questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and then you will be able, when we ask you, to unmute yourself and ask your question. So first on my list is Siddharth.
Hi, Harold. So a quick question, just trying to understand what is the cost associated with the certification for the platform and the client?
Wants to answer this? Peter, maybe you're the best person to answer this.
It was breaking up a little bit. The process associated with the certification.
The question was about the costs of a certification. Yeah? I mean, Asif already mentioned you have to be a GCF member, so there's a membership fee, an annual fee. Then Magnus will get some money, I assume, for his services, and Peter, for the RTO service, you will also be paid.
And the cost largely depends on, now speaking on behalf of the RTO services, the cost is largely dependent on how well your product is with regards to test automation and quality. So the cost goes up if the level of automation is low. But this is not only manpower, so to speak. If you want to translate into man days or similar, there are different assets that are required to conduct the certification. One is the validated platform, which is of course an effort to provide such a platform, and then also the way of working in an ISO 17025 organization, where basically the entity that is executing the test cases cannot be an entity that is also doing troubleshooting, for example. So in the case of AASO here, we have a separate group, R&D group, that can do troubleshooting and stage equipment and help with those type of things, while there is another team that is executing the test cases. So that must be very clearly separated in following the conformance standards. But as I said, depends on the preparation, the amount of effort that is required.
Okay. And just thank you for that. And one follow-up question: do we need to ship the actual MCX server platform into the lab in order to perform the conformance tests?
Shall I answer on that?
Yes, please, Peter.
Actually, the certification platform, the test platform, it contains a simulated 4G network as well as a simulated MCX server. So all you need to bring to the table is the client integrated with the device if it's Route 2, or the client only if it relates to route number 4.
And if I can just add, as mentioned in one of the presentations earlier, in the future we'll look at server-side certification potentially, given that there's a lot of development happening in 3GPP first that needs to happen. In the case of when you're doing server-side conformance testing, then of course a server would be required to probably be shipped to the lab, but we're not there yet. So at this point, it's just a pure client certification, and as Peter mentioned, a server is not needed in the test environment because it's already built into the test platform.
Okay, thank you. Then let's move on. Next question is from Angel Santos.
Yes, hello, thank you. So I have several questions. One is that, for example, a CAP radio would apply route 1 because I think it's a client integrated in a UE, so would be equivalent to a route 1. I'm correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so and for that, the manufacturer should be associate manufacturer 1.
That's correct. So you have a choice of associate manufacturer 1 or full manufacturer. Again, when you look at the difference, I believe the main difference between full manufacturer and associate manufacturer 1 is their AASO capabilities. So a full manufacturer has additional requirements internally from a development perspective that they need to meet from a quality management program. But if you don't have that quality management program, then you would join as an associate manufacturer 1.
Okay, and the dispatcher would apply the route number 4.
If the dispatcher is a control room in the back end, technically yes, it would be route number 4. However, I should point out that in the current scope of testing, control room clients, which may just be run over non-LTE or just IP, whether it's a wired connection, that test model is not yet supported in 3GPP. However, technically, you can take a client that is meant for a control room or a dispatcher and run it over an LTE host to ensure that the MCX functionality is still working. But we have in our product roadmap from GCF side to discuss with 3GPP to make sure that any client, IP-only clients, i.e. that don't require LTE as a bearer, that a test model be developed. So today there is no test model for IP-only. All clients that are certified are run over an LTE-supported host.
Okay, thank you. And a couple of more questions, may. So, and also does the test number, you say that, for example, if your product has certain features, then you have to pass, I don't know, for example, 10 test cases. If has another kind of features, would be another 15. So that will depend on the product, right?
That's correct. What we require from certification is that whatever the features the product supports, if it's commercialized and you're supporting it, then that has to be declared. And if there's a test case mapping to that feature, then that test case has to be executed. Obviously, if your product doesn't support a feature and there's a test case that's validated for that feature, we won't expect you to pass it. So, for example, if you don't support EMBMS in your product, there is a test case for EMBMS that won't be executed and your product can still be certified. So it's always based on the features your product supports that you're willing to declare and essentially making sure that any test cases that are mapped to that feature are executed and passed.
Okay, so the certification document won't be unique. I mean, it will be specified what you support and what you don't.
Yeah,
right?
Your declaration. So when I mentioned those annexes earlier that needs to be filled out, those annexes will contain all of the features you support and the associated test results, etc. Yeah, so that compliance folder will contain all of that information that potentially a customer like an operator may request to see and make sure that they have access to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Good, thank you. Then let's move on. Next question is from Guillaume. Gosh.
Yes, thank you, Harald. Thank you all. So Guillaume from UIC International Railways. So I would like to thank you all because I think it's really interesting webinar. Maybe to the previous Q&A, maybe we should discuss with Asif about the GCF FMCS certification program because the cab radio is not a UE, so maybe this is a different stream, but let's park this discussion. Yeah. Maybe 2 questions on test case selection. So I understood that 579-2 describe 51 test cases, but only 36 are activated. So I'm not sure to understand what do you mean by activated, the first question. And second question, it's a test case selection, but I understood all the test cases are mandatory, so it's not really a selection. So just to understand, what do you mean by test case selection?
Yeah. Maybe I can answer that, and if Magnus, you want to add in after, you can definitely add in. So to your first question about the test cases, actually, if you could just remind me what the first question is again, because I was thinking about the second question.
What do you mean by activated test cases?
Activated, right. So so in GCF, we have test platforms that have to be validated. So similar to before we can certify a product, the test platform itself has to be proven to be able to execute that test correctly. And this validation activity happens once every quarter, potentially. And today, 36 of the 50 odd test cases have been proven to be working on the test platform that is currently active. The other test cases have not been validated yet. So as a result, because they're not validated, they're in what we call category P or provisional. They're not yet part of the scope of the testing, but once they get validated, they will turn into category A or category B, and they will become a mandatory part of testing. All of our work items, when we develop them, has a threshold criteria for test cases. We don't require that 100% of the test cases have to be validated in order for a test platform to be active. So the threshold for mission critical services, because it's a niche new technology, was set at 60%. So 60%, as long as 60% of the 50 odd test cases are validated properly and are proven to work, that test platform can be considered active for certification purposes. So today, the 36 test cases that you see are 36 test cases that have been proven on the test platform that now can be used to certify a product. But over time, we expect that number to go up. So we expect, in the coming CAG meetings, our agreement group meetings, that additional validations will be submitted. Some of these are priority 1, priority 2. So the test cases have been prioritized to show which is of more importance versus, less priority. But over time, we expect that number to go up. And because we just launched on June 11th, I believe, so it's quite recent. You'll see that lower number, but over time that will increase. And then to your second question, in terms of the test case of the 36. So sorry, if you can repeat the second question again.
Yeah, so you mentioned all the test cases are mandatory, but so how?
No, the selection.
Selection.
Yeah. So the AASO rule typically is that when you're looking at a full-fledged device, let's say it supports LTE, 5G, NR, MCX. There's quite a lot of feature set that comes into play that the vendor has to make sure that they specify before you can select a test case, right? So that's where the AASO comes in to help develop and really determine what test cases need to be selected. For mission critical of 50 odd test cases, and as Magnus mentioned, they're for MCPTT, these are whatever is mandatory is already indicated in the standards. So the selection criteria is pretty easy. But over time, as you develop MC video, MC data, as newer releases come in, there will be a lot of optional features. Maybe those products will not support those options, right? EMBMS being an example, or GNSS is another example. Maybe those products don't support that. Then that test case will not be selected. So again, that's where the idea is that the test cases are selected based on applicability expressions that are in that TS 579-4, I believe, -4 and -5. Those are 2 documents, and the AASO will make that determination to say, okay, based on the PICS document that's submitted by the manufacturer, what are the feature set? Do the applicability expressions indicate that a certain test case is required or not? And do that assessment that way. Yeah, Magnus, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I think you have covered everything here, and I just mentioned an example here for MC data, for example, that's structured in different feature sets. You have, for example, SDS and for short data services, and file delivery FD. Those are 2 features that are 2 capabilities in that sense. And if the client only supports SDS, for example, you don't need to pass the file delivery feature, for example. You need to test that, because it's maybe just a device dedicated for SDS, for example.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see two more people have raised hands, so we may overrun a couple of minutes. Next is Sudipto, please, your question.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Quickly, so in the F.49 document, we have not applicable option. So in case some of those 36 test cases are not applicable for the product, the feature is not there, can the product get certified?
So maybe Magnus, something for you to answer.
Or Asif.
So this is where you have to get into the details. If the feature is not supported, right, then at a high level, the test case should not be selected. But if the feature is mandatory from 3GPP and you're not supporting it, then obviously you need to support it. So this is where, as Magnus mentioned, when you go into that the specification, the PICS documentation, there'll be certain features that are mandatory by, like, for example, security. You need to have security implemented, right? If you don't have security implemented, then it's a violation of the standard. So if you say, well, my device doesn't support IPsec, can I still get certified? No, you won't be able to get certified. So you have to determine the mandatory features, make sure they're supported. The optional features, you have a choice of either supporting or not supporting. If it's not supported, then those test cases won't be executed. Or should not be.
That's mentioned, the optional part, or the optional or mandatory nature of the feature is specified in the PICS documents, right? 579-4.
Yeah, it's captured. It's captured in the standards. Yeah.
Sure, thanks. Next question is this RTO and the ACE list that is there in the GCF portal. So do all of them have MCX testing capability?
No, that's a very good question. So when you go to an RTO, the list on our website, as a member, you'll see the more details. You'll see the areas, scope of testing that each of the labs, the RTOs, are supporting. And they will have to declare MCX, the standard, basically under their accreditation for ISO 17025. So today, I believe AASO is the only one, but there are other RTOs who are also looking at updating their accreditations. So ultimately, what we want is a healthy ecosystem of multiple RTOs who are supporting in different geographic regions. So that's where the RTO capability comes in. For the ACE, it's a little bit different because the ACE is more of a subject matter expert in GCF certification. So as I mentioned, we're using the same methodology for MCX certification as we do for LTE or 5G, right? So technically, other ACEs, if they're comfortable to taking on MCX, they can do that because it might be in combination with, other cellular technologies that are supported on the device, and the ACE needs to just have the more specific knowledge about the GCF certification process, to understand how the standards work, to understand how to do the applicability expressions. So similarly, there can be, ACEs don't have their accreditations listed, but you would need to reach out. But obviously, Ericsson and Magnus, he's the subject matter expert from Ericsson who's providing specifically for MCX as well. So.
Sure. Okay. Got it. I think that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Next hand I see Aline Dubois from Airbus.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I have actually two questions, and the first one, I think you almost answered it already. As if you said there was only one certified GCF validated test platform, if I understood it correctly. And you said as well that this platform is using a simulated MCX server to simulate, to have the server in front of the client. Does it mean that when you will have several platforms, they will all use the same simulated server, or could there be different simulation tools?
Yeah, they may be different. So the first one we have is a Roden Schwartz platform that's using what is known as the IP-CAN model from the 3GPP. So this test model uses the LTE simulated server as a black box to basically communicate over with the UE. There is another test platform in development that is using full EUTRA model, which means it's actually got all of the LTE aspects integrated into the test platform itself. Now, from a UE perspective, it doesn't matter because the messaging is all supported over both models. So whether you are testing against the first platform or the second platform in the near future, the test results should still be the same. Now, there are some minor differences. I think there's some test cases that are not supported on the IP-CAN model, like GNSS and EMBMS. Now, whether they're supported in the UTRA model, it remains to be seen because that's still in development. But ultimately, you could have different test platforms that are using different test models in the background, but that's irrelevant to the EUE. What is relevant is that different test platforms might support different test cases. So as I mentioned, you need 60% of the test cases validated for a platform to be active. So for example, test platform A might support the first 60%. The second test platform might support, a 40 to 100, you know what I mean? So there might be some overlap, but there might be differences in the test cases they support as well. So ultimately, if you have multiple test platforms, you might have to get the testing done, over a couple of different platforms to get the full 100% coverage. But again, we expect our test platform vendors to fully continue to support their test platforms and build on top of them. So hopefully they get all close to 100% coverage as possible.
Okay. And the Rode Schwartz equipment you talk about, is it supporting both the simulation of LTE network and MCX? I'm not sure I got it.
Yeah, I can't speak. Yeah, the Rode Schwartz platform is supporting the IP-CAN model, which has an MCX portion implemented in the test platform itself using TTCN, and it's using an LTE simulator, which is kind of like a black box to do the bearer communication.
Okay, I knew the LTE part, but I didn't know about the MCX. Okay, thank you. And then I have another question, which is more roadmap related maybe. You mentioned earlier as well that the server side might be tested at some point. If I remember well, in one of the drawings, there was this inter MCX interface, which was interface 4, if I'm not wrong. But so far, there is no plan on the MCX server side to test the interface 1, which is interface to the clients. Because if you think about big public safety organism like Ministry of Interior, they may want to have different clients in front of the server they will buy, and so we need to make sure this server is as compliant as the client in the UE themselves.
Yeah,
so
maybe I answer this, Asif.
Oh, you answer this one, yeah.
Yes, so current plans are, and Asif said we are not there yet, but current plans are, and some activities are undergoing. For the server side, we have actually 3 different interfaces we're looking at. To the server client interface on the server side, to the server-server interface when you connect to another MCX server, and to the IWF interface when you connect your MCX server to another technology like P25 Tetra GSMR. So these are the 3 interfaces we will address.
So at some point you apply to this is not yet there, but it's in the roadmap. Okay.
Yeah, it's on the roadmap, and it's dependent on we have certain dependencies like on 3GPP to first have test specifications developed in terms of reference being changed. So we're doing a similar assessment in GCF. So at this stage, there is no formal topic of server side on the GCF roadmap, but it is an item that we're actively investigating, doing some business planning on, and hopefully with the 3GPP developments that will hopefully drive this to some conclusion in the near future. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. And one last hand is from Vasiliki.
Hello,
yeah, sorry.
Thank you. No worries. Thank you for all the presentations. I'm also working in the railways with Guillaume. The question is if we have specific FRMCS test cases, the steps are to include them in this TS series like the 38 before, after to develop them in the platform, and at the end to execute it if agreed. These are the, do we have to understand it like this? Or
yeah, so, yeah, if I can answer that. So the first step is in the standards within 3GPP to first determine which test specification the FRMCS test cases fall under. Will it be the existing MCS, as Magnus pointed out, release 17, I think it was 38.579 is the new set that's going to be built for 5G, right? So if it's going to be part of that same specification suite, then what will happen is it gets captured in the specification suite, or it might even be its own set of specifications. I don't know. Following that, TF160, which is a task force under RAND 5 that develops TTCN code, they would have to, with the planning, talking to GCF and other MRP partners, determine which test cases are of high priority and develop the TTCN software for that. Once that is done, then GCF is in a position to bring in a work item proposal to say, okay, we've got a standardized test specification, we've got TTCN software being developed, we have enough interest in our ecosystem to build test platforms to test FRMCS. So can we bring in a work item proposal with supporting members and bring that through the standard certification process that we have? We don't expect FRMCS to be any different or unique in the sense that it requires process changes. We expect it to be going through the standardized GCF framework, but we need those upstream dependencies met first, i.e. 3GPP has to first define the test specs, TTCN software has to develop, and then we can bring that in.
Thank you very much.
Maybe
it's
I
clear,
can just, maybe I can just comment on that as well. For example, the functional alias functionality was added from the railway in release 15, and those test cases are already defined. So in 36579-2. So when release 15 would be activated with those test cases, then you would have test cases related to the railway's requirement. And then, of course, there might be other things added later on, but in release 15, the first ones are added as I see it.
Yeah, okay. I thought for the more complex ones added later, but yes, of course, yeah, as you explained. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you. One more hand. Kevin, Graham, please.
Yeah, hi all. Look, I just wanted to thank the four of you for such an informative webinar. I'm still learning some of this, and I think, evidenced by the audience that's attended today, I think we've got some great interest from industry. So thank you all, and thanks to all of those that have asked some great questions during this session. So I look forward to working with all the parties and our experts to drive this process further. So thanks, Asif, Harold, Magnus, and Peter. Appreciate your effort in putting this webinar together.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kevin. I don't see any more hands. I think we have overrun already, so apologies for lasting longer than expected, but there were a lot of interesting questions. I think we can conclude the webinar now. Thank you everyone for attending. If you have more questions, please feel free to contact either Asif or me, and we will try together with Peter and Magnus to answer what we can. Thank you everyone, and have a nice day.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, bye.